Hello, Falcons fans, and welcome back to Falcons TV, brought to you by La Quinta Inn. My name is Andy Zilch. I'm here with the Director of Hockey Operations, Bruce Landon. We're here to talk about the AHL schedule. It's a process that is a very timely process. And can you tell me about the beginning of it?
Yeah, it is a very timely process, and it's very difficult, and that's one of the things that people don't realize how difficult it is. And it really starts in February when we have to submit our dates to the American Hockey League, and then the next step after that is there's a meeting to determine conferences and divisional alignments, that kind of thing. And then after that, Andy, it's what comes out as a schedule format, and what that is where it really gets tricky. It's sitting down with all the teams in the American Hockey League, trying to determine who you're going to play and how many times you're going to play each team, and that's where it gets tricky, and that's what fans don't understand, where they wish we were playing other teams. But there are a lot of reasons why you're not playing certain teams.
And to go along with that, fans may ask, why aren't we going out to see the Western Conference teams? Why is that?
Well, it's a combination of two things. One is expense. People have to realize we have to keep our travel expenses in line, and if we don't, we're going to be in trouble. And also, you have to understand is that other teams want to have to play you. As an example, if we want to play Chicago, maybe Chicago doesn't want to play us because it means they're dropping games against somebody else they'd sooner play. So you never get the perfect match. I remember one year, I tell the story, I yelled across the conference room at Tom Mitchell, who was running the Binghamton team, and said, "Tom, do you want to play us this year?" And he says, "No way, I don't want to play this year." And he was joking, but that's what it boils down to. So, you're not going to travel out west because of money, number one. And this year, you're staying pretty much within your division, within your conference. And we have added a couple new opponents this year.
Are you pretty excited that we're going to see likes of Rochester, a team we haven't seen in 9 years, in Utica?
Absolutely. Rochester, and that's, again, another example. Years ago, we wanted to play Rochester, and they just did not want to play us because they wanted to play more within teams close to them, whether it would Syracuse or Toronto at the time. So it boils down to trying to find the right mix, and bringing Rochester back makes a lot of sense. We have a long history against them, going way back when we beat them out and win a couple of Calder Cups, and bringing in a new look every year, bringing in a couple new teams, 2 or 3 new teams every year, I think is important for the fans, but you can't play everybody. Now, ideally, in an ideal situation, you'd want a perfectly balanced schedule, but it's not going to happen in the American Hockey League because expenses don't allow it.
When you're creating the schedule, or when the schedule is given to you, I should say, what is your goal to make Falcons hockey on certain dates, certain times? What is it?
Well, first and foremost is when you negotiate your lease with the Mass Mutual Center, you have to make sure you protect your lease. One of the most important things you do in this business is your dates, because I was told many, many years ago by Bill Torrey, who was the architect of the New York Islanders dynasty, is basically the most important thing I'll ever do is work on the schedule because it drives competition, it drives expenses, it drives revenue. So everything you do, the schedule is one of the most important things that I'm doing right now in my new role with the hockey club. And the first thing you do is you look at keeping the expenses in line, who you like to play from a revenue standpoint. Now, Providence has taken over from Hartford as our number one draw. Now, this year we're actually playing Providence one extra time, home and away, which I think is one too many, but it's just the way it all came out. But you want to keep everything in balance as you can from a travel standpoint. And what I look at, just to give you the process that goes through, the league, after you've determined how many times you can play each other, they send what's called a structural schedule out. And all that is look at to make sure that the league hasn't given you a trip that just doesn't make sense, that you just can't do. And once that's finalized, then they send a first draft. And after they send the first draft, you have an opportunity to do some tweaking with some of the other teams. And years ago, you could do a lot more tweaking to get a better schedule, either from a travel standpoint or a home standpoint, because you were allowed to play 4 games in 5 nights. Well, about 3 or 4 years ago, we stopped that. There's no more 4 games in 5 nights. So that took away some of your flexibility. The other thing the National Hockey League wants is to reduce the number of 3 games in 3 nights. Last year, as an example, we had 17 weekends where we played 3 games in 3 nights. This year, we've got that down to 11. So that certainly makes our NHL partner happy. It's better for the players for rest and recovery. But it sort of limits you on what you can do in tweaking the schedule. When the first draft came out this year, I was able to make 3 changes, 2 to help us on a travel, 1 to shift 1 home date. Obviously, we want to get as many weekend dates as we can, but so does every other team in the league. So we're fortunate here that we have a good lease. We protected our lease as far as the dates were concerned. So we come away with, 12 Fridays, 12 Saturdays, and 10 Sundays. And of the 4 midweek games, 2 are during school vacation. There are probably 29 other teams in the American Hockey League would love to have our schedule.
During the process, what do you think is the hardest part on your end? Is it trying to pick and choose some of those impossible travel schedules that you talked about and tweaking them?
Well, we're fortunate here that our travel this year, you have to remember this year too, we lost Manchester and we lost Worcester. And those were day of game trips for us. So you have to replace those games against somebody. So as a result, our travel budget's going up this year, and it could go up a considerable amount because, we have to make up those games. And so you can't be playing Hartford 10, 12 times and Providence 14 times. So that's why Rochester's in the mix this year. We're going back to Binghamton. Utica's in the mix this year. We made up some teams. We lost Norfolk, which was a good thing because that was our longest bus trip. And this year we're not playing St. John's, which is the first time ever. I'm sure next year we'll go back and play St. John's. That's a trip where we fly to, but there's also a subsidy program in place with the American Hockey League. So the toughest thing is really just finding that right balance of home games and making sure your travel schedule is as easy as possible on the players from their standpoint and also from a budget standpoint.
I'll tell you what, I'm glad that the Norfolk trip's out. Although Dr. Basin probably missed seeing me after that one. Thanks a lot, Bruce.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, fans, be sure to check us out on Falcons TV every week. Next week, we'll talk with our assistant coaches, Doug Janik, and then following that, Mike Bavis. Thanks for watching.